Welcome to the Bite Size Brilliance podcast. I'm your host, April Darley, and we're going to talk about guilt today. And what place does guilt have in your life? Like, how can that possibly benefit you? So, the funny thing about guilt is it's complicated. It sounds like a Facebook status from years ago, right? It is complicated. But years ago, after I graduated med school, I was getting trained in this subconscious reprogramming technique, and it was called neuro emotional technique. And during the course of this training, to get certified, you had to take a year's worth of seminars at different locations around the country, different parts of the year. And each seminar would dive into different elements of this technique. And part of this discipline is that there were emotions that were attached to Chinese meridians. And there was a whole chart. It's fascinating. I love the whole topic. But I noticed one day that guilt was nowhere on this emotion chart. So during one of these conferences, I had an opportunity to sit down and speak with the creator of this technique. And I asked him why guilt wasn't on the meridian chart anywhere. And he looked at me and he said, I thought a really long time about guilt, whether to include it or to leave it off. In the end, I decided to leave it off. And here's why. Guilt is so complicated, right? That it encompasses so many different emotions that there was no single place that I could put it. Because within guilt, you have fear, shame, regret, embarrassment, and so on, right? You could tag so many different feelings to the theme of guilt that it's impossible to just put it in one place on a meridian or an emotional chart because it just depends on how you are expressing your personal guilt. Now, also, to piggyback on that, I was in my early, well, probably mid 20s, I guess, around 23, 24. And I received one of the best pieces of wisdom that I could have ever received from a friend about guilt. And it's something I use with my clients to this day. I don't even remember what we were talking about. I do remember we were in a bar because, I mean, let's be honest, we were ladies in our 20s, right? And we just got off work early and we were in downtown and we did some glorious day drinking at that time, right? But I must have told her some story. And she looked at me and she said, April, guilt is optional. You don't have to feel it. And I think I must have sat there with my mind blown. And it's a really great indication that I don't even remember what I was guilty about. It really means that I've completely let whatever that incident go. But I have carried that piece of wisdom. Guilt is optional, and you don't have to feel it with me throughout the rest of my life. And I love sharing that wisdom with others because if you think about it, guilt is really only torturing you. Nobody else is experiencing guilt like you are. And if you look at guilt as that umbrella, if you try to tease that and really get into it, it's like what aspect, what emotions are you really feeling? If you didn't call it guilt, what is it? Shame, fear, embarrassment, humiliation, anger, regret? Because anytime you can get something down to the lowest common denominator, when you can identify what it really is instead of what we think it is, that's when you're going to get some mental emotional resolution on that. And often guilt does not serve us because it just disrupts us. And we tend to hold on to things that don't belong to us, especially if you're an empath. We tend to hold on to emotions on behalf of other people, or we feel bad for people pleasing reasons, or we feel bad for reasons that other people would tell us you don't need to feel bad about that. So, really, if you do feel guilt, the way it is helping you is it's letting you know there's a disturbance in the force, right? There is a disruption in what you think and believe to be true versus what you're actually doing. And that disruption is telling you something's wrong. So if you stop and dig into what that disruption is, ask yourself some of these questions. Why am I feeling this way? Is this actually helpful? Is this an unhelpful emotion to me? Is this emotion causing me unwarranted pain? Or is this guilt telling me, you know what, I was in the wrong? And if I encounter a similar situation, I'm not going to take the same action I did before because I don't like the way that action made me feel. So then guilt is beneficial to you because it was helping you change your behavior. But you don't need to carry that with you for the rest of your life. It's okay to let guilt go when you know what the lesson was. You don't have to keep repeating it. Guilt is optional and you don't have to feel it. So I hope that little nugget of wisdom was powerful for you as it was for me, and that you carry that with you just like I have carried it with me. And I'm wishing you so much love, success, healthy nervous systems without guilt, and for you to live your best life. Until next week, my friends, goodbye.